In this video, we're going to cover relative and absolute cell references along with freeze panes. What we have here is a list of products and their costs. What we want to calculate is the retail cost, the discounted cost, sales tax, and the total sale. So let's go ahead and get started. We know that we have our margin defined as 50%, so we want to calculate our margin here. So we're going to do equals sum to create our formula. And we're going to take the cost of the product and we're going to go ahead and add in the margin. So that's going to be the cost of the product times the value of the margin. And you'll notice the margin is in B2. And by default, Excel uses what's called a relative reference. And by using this relative reference, this will change as the position of the data changes. So if we close this out, what we're going to see is we end up with an error. And the reason that we end up with an error is because our value for margin is locked into B2, but on our first line it shows as correct. Our second line is moving to B3, and then of course when we come down here we've moved to B4. So what's happening is as these rows increment, so is the value, because it's relative. As one goes down, so does the other. What we need to do is we need to set this to absolute. So when we come back to this cell, we remove the parentheses and we hit our F4 key. Hitting F4, you'll notice changes this reference to have a dollar sign before the B and a dollar sign before the 2. What this means is neither the column or row could change. If we continue to press this, we'll see that there's no dollar sign before the B, but there is before the 2. This is called a mixed reference. And what this means is the B can change, so the columns can change, but the rows cannot. The 2 will remain the same. And if you hit F4 again, it's the reverse. Now the column cannot change, but the row can. For our example, we're going to go ahead and cycle through until we have a true absolute. Neither the column nor the row can change. And we close this out. And what we end up with now is the correct values. So you'll notice it's not changing. The B2, no matter what row I click on, doesn't change. And that's exactly what we wanted. So now we're going to go ahead and calculate our discount. We want to do equals sum. We're going to take our retail price and we're going to subtract the retail price times our discount. And again, we want to hit our F4. And that's going to make that absolute. And we close that out. What we end up with now is a very nice set of what our discounted price would be. So there is no discount. That's going to work. If I come up here to my discount box and I give myself a 5% discount, now we can see that it's adjusting out the discounts. So now I'm going to come into my sales tax and I'm going to do something similar. We're going to start with sum. I'm going to take this and I'm going to take my discounted price and I'm going to multiply it by my sales tax. Again, remembering to hit F4 so that that's an absolute. And we'll go ahead and close that and hit enter. Now I have my sales tax. And lastly, what I want to do is I want to calculate the price that's going to end up on the customer's receipt. So I'm going to add these two together. And there we go. So now I have all of that set up. I can come up here and I can change my margin, for example, to 25%. What happens if I take my discount to 27%? Well, now I'm selling at a loss. You'll notice I've used some conditional formatting here to turn this red if my discount is above my margin. So we'll take this to 10%. Say we're going to change our sales tax rate to 6%. And all of the values down here, all the way down through the entire sheet, are changing as I change these input boxes. So this is a really nice way to play with the numbers and see what the impacts would be, especially if you were throwing a chart in there. Now, the other thing that I'm noticing about this sheet is as I scroll, I lose what I set my values to. And I also lose the header of my table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to row 5. I'm going to click on View. I'm going to go to Freeze Panes, and I'm going to go ahead and freeze this pane. Now what happens as I scroll is my values stay static, my header stays static, but then the actual data scrolls. and you'll see the scroll bar over here. You'll see a line right in here. So that's what we've done, is we've created a sheet that allows you to quickly change your margins and your discounts and your sales tax, recalculate all of that, and actually keep your header row as you scroll through. And that is what we use freeze panes and absolute cell references for.